Have you ever really stopped to wonder who actually owns your morning coffee? Or, your favorite donut? If you grab a coffee at Pete's or a donut from Krispy Kreme, you probably think of them as these standalone, everyday, totally normal American brands. But the reality? It's a bit wild. They're actually controlled by an invisible, mega-wealthy dynasty. And they definitely aren't the only ones. Today, we're going to look at how a handful of the ultra-rich across the globe control these absolutely staggering empires. But more importantly, we're going to look at exactly how they keep that wealth entirely locked down from one generation to the next. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the architectures of wealth. We are going to dive deep into how the world's richest families manage to secure not just their cash, but their power, their culture, and their legacies across literally centuries. So, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The anatomy of patrimony. 2. Securing the family fortune. 3. Culture, networks, and power. 4. Reckoning with dark legacies. And 5. Rethinking inherited privilege.
Section 1. The anatomy of patrimony. More than just money.
Okay, so historically, especially if we're talking about Western Europe, a family estate basically just meant land being passed from a patriarch to his eldest son, right? But as researchers from the Minnesota Law Review point out, patrimony is actually so much more than that. It's this extended set of inheritable family resources. Basically, it represents a comprehensive suite of inherited privilege. It's the economic assets, sure, but it also encompasses immense cultural and social capital.
You can kind of think of a family's estate as these overlapping layers. The entire family patrimony is held up by 3 distinct pillars: economic capital, cultural capital, and social capital. And all of these get passed down together as a package deal to solidify a family standing. Let's actually look at the sheer scale of that economic pillar first, because it's mind-blowing. $48 billion. That is the combined net worth of the Hartono brothers in Indonesia. Just let that number sink in. Through their Jarum group, these octogenarian siblings produce roughly a sixth of all the cigarettes manufactured in their entire country. Oh, and they also hold massive investments in banking. It brilliantly illustrates the sheer, immense scale that economic patrimony can reach when you consolidate it all within a single family.
But the concentration of power gets even deeper than that. Let's take a look at Sweden's Wallenberg family. By the 1970s, the Wallenberg family businesses were so vast, they employed 40% of Sweden's total industrial workforce. 40%. Imagine one single family having a hand in the employment of nearly half of a whole nation's industrial workers. This is economic patrimony operating at a level that literally shapes national economies.
Section 2. Securing the family fortune. The power of the trust.
So the big question is, how do these families keep these massive empires intact over centuries? Well, they use a family trust. See, a regular will just hands over the money, which leaves the next generation totally free to squander it. But a trust projects asset management into the future. It works like this. Step 1, the settlor, that's the wealth creator, sets strict terms. Step 2, a trustee manages the assets. The Minnesota Law Review actually notes that the trustee acts almost as a financial substitute parent, enforcing family values and shielding assets from creditors. And Step 3, the beneficiary only gets distributions if they meet those specific conditions. It is basically the ultimate tool for financial paternalism.
On top of that, the trust is an absolute masterclass in avoiding taxes and protecting assets across generations. Returning to the Wallenbergs for a second, to legally avoid inheritance taxes, they established 16 different nonprofit foundations. Through those structures, the family effectively controls a massive business empire, which includes their flagship company, Investor AB, a company that currently boasts a market capitalization of over $100 billion. So they avoid the heavy tax burden but keep total control.
Section 3. Culture, networks, and power. The invisible inheritance.
As we're seeing, inheriting a family name brings an entire ecosystem of privilege with it. Column 1 is economic capital, the money in the trust we just talked about. But column 2 is cultural capital. This includes inalienable heirloom assets, cherished family properties, and even acquired taste for things like high art or sailing. And finally, social capital. This involves titles, Ivy League alumni networks, private club memberships, and exclusive board seats. A family trust manages and perpetuates all three of these columns simultaneously. It's the whole package.
And this cultural capital often shapes the family's entire identity. For example, the Wallenberg family adopted a Latin motto back in 1931, Esse non videre, which translates to be rather than to seem. It perfectly captures their cultural orientation. They maintain this invisible, low-key, yet intensely powerful social identity. They completely eschew conspicuous, flashy displays of wealth, and they prefer quiet, dominant control from behind the scenes.
Section 4. Reckoning with Dark Legacies. When patrimony includes a dark past.
We have to acknowledge that sometimes a family's historical baggage contains some breathtakingly tragic complexities. Let's circle back to the Raymond family. They're the dynasty behind the JAB Holding Company. That's the $20 billion empire that owns your Krispy Kreme donuts, Peet's Coffee, Pret-a-Manger, and Keurig. Well, independent historical investigations ordered by the company's own chairman recently revealed that this sunny portfolio of breakfast brands was actually built on a deeply dark history during the Nazi era.
To understand the depth of this, we just have to look at the historical record. In July 1937, Albert Reimann Jr., who was an executive in his father's company, wrote a letter to Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS. He wrote, quote, "We are a purely Aryan family business that is over 100 years old. The owners are unconditional followers of the race theory. The family company became a model National Socialist plant and heavily utilized forced labor, subjecting prisoners of war and civilians from occupied territories to incredibly brutal conditions."
But the historical contradiction here is, well, it's really astounding. Let's trace this timeline. While Reimann Jr. was an enthusiastic Nazi, one of his employees was Emilie Landecker, a young woman who was half Jewish. In 1942, Emilie's Jewish father, Alfred Landecker, was deported by the Nazis. Yet, inexplicably, Emilie and Albert Reimann Jr. fell in love. They ended up having 3 children together in the 1950s, whom Albert formally adopted later in 1965. Today, those children own a massive stake in the JAB empire. This duality means that the modern heirs carry the histories of both the perpetrator and the victim. Before he was murdered, Alfred Landecker sent a heartbreaking last letter to his children from a ghetto that was serving as a transfer point to the death camps. He wrote, "I wish you all the best for the future. Stay healthy and become decent human beings. Obey God." For decades, the Riemann children actually did not know the full truth of their father's Nazi fervency, nor the horrific conditions at the company they inherited.
And the Riemanns are not the only ones with a fractured legacy. The Wallenbergs also embodied staggering contradictions during World War II. On one hand, the Wallenberg Bank was blockaded by the U.S. government until 1947 because Jacob Wallenberg was considered strongly pro-German and the bank had collaborated with Nazi Germany. Yet, at the exact same time, Raoul Wallenberg, from the very same family, was a diplomat in Budapest who heroically issued protective passports, saving the lives of over 15,000 Jews from the Holocaust.
So how do modern families deal with this kind of inherited history? The Riemann family has chosen the path of corporate atonement. After the history was exposed, they renamed their family foundation the Alfred Landecker Foundation, specifically honoring their murdered Jewish grandfather. They committed a one-time donation of 10 million euros to help former forced laborers, and they increased their foundation's budget to 25 million euros annually, all to educate the public about the Holocaust and resist bigotry.
Section 5. Rethinking Inherited Privilege, Democratizing the Trust.
When we look at how these massive fortunes and their complex, sometimes dark histories are locked in place, it really forces us to look at the legal structures themselves. And here is what you should really take away from this explainer today. The Minnesota Law Review research points out that family trusts act as a unique catalyst for compound inequality. They don't just preserve cash, they fuel long-term economic inequality by shielding billions from taxes. They consolidate social standing by passing down elite networks. They create elite political power by insulating these families from economic downturns. But, importantly, because trusts are so incredibly effective at protecting assets, there's a potential to reimagine them,
to make them work on behalf of vulnerable and historically dispossessed communities rather than just the ultra-rich.
Which leads us to our final, really provocative question. If the trust is the ultimate tool for preserving wealth, culture, and power across generations, how might we democratize the trust for everyday citizens? Can we actually repurpose the legal architecture of dynastic wealth to build a more equal society for everyone? It's a massive, massive question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the pillars of patrimony. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.